Welcome to Skytech-Lens. For decades, the Royal Canadian Air Force relied on its fleet of CF-18 Hornets, once the pride of Canada's military. These jets, introduced in the early 1980s, represented a leap forward in technology and capability for the country. They patrolled Canada's vast airspace, participated in NATO missions, and stood ready to defend the nation at a moment's notice. The CF-18s became a symbol of Canadian strength and commitment to its allies. But by the early 2020s, these jets were showing their age. Decades of service in harsh climates and demanding missions had taken their toll, leaving the fleet increasingly difficult to maintain. The technology that made them formidable in the 1980s was now dangerously obsolete. Modern threats and adversaries had evolved, and the CF-18s struggled to keep pace with the rapid advancements in aerial warfare. The airframes were tired, electronics outdated, and maintenance costs were spiraling. Mechanics worked tirelessly to keep the jets flying, but spare parts were harder to find, and each year brought new challenges. The Department of National Defense knew a replacement was urgently needed. The risk of falling behind, technologically, was too great, and the safety of pilots and the security of Canadian airspace were at stake. The Future Fighter Capability Project was launched, not just to buy new planes, but to secure Canada's airspace and fulfill its NATO and NORAD commitments for decades. This was a decision that would impact Canada's role on the world stage and its ability to respond to emerging threats. The search was expected to be straightforward, with American contenders like the Boeing Super Hornet and Lockheed Martin F-35 as front-runners. Both jets were proven, advanced, and already in service with key allies. These jets promised interoperability with allies and a familiar supply chain. Choosing an American jet seemed like the safe, logical path for Canada's future fighter. But then, a surprise, Sweden's Saab Gripen E entered the competition. The Gripen E, a modern and agile fighter, brought a fresh perspective to the table. Initially dismissed as an outsider, the Gripen's offer was compelling, addressing long-standing concerns in Canadian defense procurement. It promised cost-effectiveness, local industry involvement, and operational flexibility. It promised not just a capable aircraft, but a new way of doing business. The Gripen E's proposal included technology transfer and opportunities for Canadian companies to participate in the global supply chain. Suddenly, the battle for Canada's next fighter jet became a fierce contest, raising questions about sovereignty and the future of the Air Force. The decision was no longer just about hardware, but about national identity and strategic independence. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown between tradition and innovation. The outcome would determine not only what jets Canada would fly, but how it would defend its skies in a rapidly changing world. The outcome would shape Canada's military for generations, influencing its alliances, its industry, and its place in the world for decades to come. The Saab Gripen was engineered for efficiency and resilience, not just raw power. Designed for Sweden's armed neutrality, it was affordable to buy and fly, an attractive prospect for budget-conscious Canada. The Gripen could operate from short, improvised runways, even frozen lake beds. Perfect for Canada's vast Arctic. A small team could refuel and rearm it in minutes, unlike the F-35's need for extensive ground support. Saab's unprecedented offer full technology transfer. Canadian companies would have the rights to maintain, repair, and upgrade the jets independently. Engineers would control the software, integrating Canadian-made weapons and sensors without foreign approval. This was a radical departure from the usual model, offering true technological independence. The Gripen wasn't just a fighter jet, it was a proposal for a strategic partnership and a more sovereign Canadian defense. But this vision would soon spark controversy at the highest levels. The Gripen's promise of autonomy resonated deeply with many Canadians. It struck a chord with those who wanted Canada to control its own defense without external dependencies. US-made systems always came with strings attached. Maintenance, upgrades, and even weapons integration required American approval. This dependency often led to complications and delays. The Gripen offered a clean break. Canada could equip its jets as it saw fit, update software independently, and respond to threats without waiting for foreign approval. This sovereign sustainment was a powerful argument for independence, not just pride. It meant Canada could maintain and upgrade its fleet on its own terms, relying on the US risked delays, extra costs, and even political leverage over Canadian policy. This was a significant concern for many policymakers. The technology transfer associated with the Gripen would boost Canada's aerospace industry, creating high-tech jobs and keeping billions at home. This was seen as a major economic benefit. The Gripen project was a chance to build a self-reliant, advanced defense sector. It represented a significant step forward for Canadian innovation and industry. For many, it was more than just a plane. It was a symbol of sovereignty and a new path for the nation. It embodied the spirit of Canadian independence and self-sufficiency. But this vision clashed with powerful interests invested in the status quo. The existing defense contracts and relationships were deeply entrenched. The debate over Canada's future fighter was about to get heated, the stakes were high, and the outcome would shape the nation's defense strategy for decades to come. The F-35 Lightning II offered the opposite, deeper integration with the US and its global defense network. Buying the F-35 meant joining a system where logistics, maintenance, and software were all managed through American channels. This promised seamless interoperability with allies, crucial for NORAD and NATO operations. But it came at a cost. Canada would never fully control its jets. Software updates, new weapons, and even maintenance required US approval. The F-35's data constantly flowed back to Lockheed Martin and the US government, giving them insight and leverage over Canada's Air Force. Critics warned this dependency could let the US influence Canadian defense policy. The F-35 was a black box. Canada would own the hardware, but not the keys. The choice was stark sovereignty with the Gripen, or alliance integration with the F-35. The decision would define Canada's place in the world. As the Gripen gained traction, pressure from the US and defense industry lobbyists intensified. Choosing a Swedish jet would be seen as a rejection of American leadership and a threat to NATO unity. Lobbyists and officials warned that picking the Gripen could jeopardize intelligence, sharing, and Canada's privileged position in NORAD. Media campaigns questioned the Gripen's capabilities, often using misleading information to sow doubt. Political pressure mounted. Supporters of the Gripen faced scrutiny and anonymous warnings about alliance schisms. The debate was reframed as a loyalty test, not just a technical choice. The atmosphere grew tense, making the Gripen seem like a risky, even unthinkable option. The pressure campaign was relentless, shaping public perception and political will. The contest was no longer just about the best jet. It was about Canada's allegiances. Behind the scenes, Canadian fighter pilots secretly tested the Gripen in Sweden. Away from politics and media, they pushed the jet to its limits. Their classified reports were glowing. The Gripen was agile, responsive, and its systems exceeded expectations. Its radar and electronic warfare capabilities were described as years ahead of what most believed possible. Saab even proposed an Arctic Gripen variant, tailored for Canada's harsh north. The pilots' feedback created a real dilemma. The F-35 promised alliance integration, but the Gripen might be more capable and offered full national control. The secret trials proved the Gripen was a top-tier fighter, not just a budget option. But these findings never reached the public. As positive Gripen reports circulated, efforts to undermine its bid escalated. The procurement process became plagued by delays and shifting requirements, often favoring the F-35. Meetings were postponed, technical criteria quietly changed, and crucial Gripen data mysteriously disappeared. Journalists and sources faced hacking and intimidation. A wall of secrecy surrounded the Gripen file. Internal pilot reports praising the Gripen were deleted, and staff were ordered to destroy related documents. The goal? Erase evidence, supporting the Gripen and make its bid impossible. The process became a shadow war, fought in backrooms and cyberspace. The Gripen's Canadian dream ended not with a bang, but with bureaucratic suffocation. What began as a promising opportunity for Saab's fighter jets slowly unraveled in the maze of government process, where decisions are often made behind closed doors and progress is measured in paperwork, not action. The process dragged on with endless reviews. The Gripen was never officially rejected, just quietly sidelined. Each new committee, each additional report seemed to push the decision further into the future until the jet's prospects faded into the background. By early 2023, Canada announced a deal for 88 F-35A jets. The decision was presented as the result of careful analysis, but for many, it felt like the outcome had been decided long before the public ever heard about it. The Gripen was barely mentioned. News coverage focused almost entirely on the F-35, leaving the Swedish contender as a footnote in the story of Canada's next-generation Air Force. The public saw the F-35 as the obvious choice, unaware of the secret trials and backroom pressure. Few realized how close the competition had been, or how much lobbying and international influence shaped the final outcome. Even as F-35 costs soared and delays mounted, the government pressed on, too committed to turn back. The momentum behind the deal was unstoppable, and any doubts were quietly brushed aside. A new Canada-Sweden Arctic security agreement hinted at lingering interest, but the Gripen option was effectively dead. Diplomatic ties remained, but the fighter jet deal was off the table. The deal was never killed, just never allowed to be born. It was quietly locked away, hidden from public scrutiny, and left to gather dust in the archives of government indecision. For Gripen supporters, it was a bitter end. The jet never lost, it just wasn't allowed to win. The sense of frustration lingered, as if a fair contest had been promised but never truly delivered. The episode became a masterclass in bureaucratic maneuvering. It showed how decisions can be shaped not just by facts, but by process, politics, and persistence. The story of the lost Gripen faded from public view, but its lessons lingered, reminding us that sometimes the most important choices are the ones never openly debated. As Canada prepares for its first F-35s, the secret Gripen saga stands as a cautionary tale. Canada gained alliance security, but lost a measure of independence. The dream of a sovereign Canadian-controlled fighter fleet died with the Gripen bid. Now, upgrades and maintenance depend on U.S. decisions. Billions flow to American industry. The hidden Gripen story reveals the immense, unseen pressures shaping Canada's biggest decisions. It highlights the tension between being a loyal ally and a truly independent nation. The legacy is complicated, a reminder of the road not taken and the questions Canada must face about its future. The Gripen deal was about more than a jet. It was about the character of the nation itself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.